So I'm a voice actor by trade, but 10 plus years before that, I was an intern in PA and tried to be a storyboard artist. And the sense that I got during that process was that I'd imagine being a showrunner, ideally you'd be a jack of all trades, know a little bit about everything, but all those different jobs, storyboard artist, character designer, background designer, the people that I met were experts at that specific task. That was their entire livelihood. So how do you make that transition to become a showrunner from that? Was that all of your beginnings to be an expert at one specific thing? And also, is there a part of the animation pipeline that you guys deal with less or prefer to be less hands-on with versus other parts?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I had a really long career before I became a showrunner. I was in the animation industry for like 15 years, and I held a lot of different positions. I started as a storyboard artist and designer. Eventually I became a director and a supervising director, and I worked in adult stuff. I worked on South Park and Bojack Horseman, and then I moved over to the kids space. I worked in Big City Greens and like stuff at DreamWorks. So it was really cool. I got to kind of through the course of my career wear a lot of different hats, and that just gave me the ability to observe pipeline in all these different kinds of ways. So when I finally became a showrunner, I felt like, okay, now I can kind of, see the whole thing working together. But yeah, I mean, that was sort of my experience.
It's important to know what you know, but more importantly, to know what you don't know. And the fact is animation more than anything else is hugely collaborative. And we as showrunners, we have department heads that have their own team. And so much of it is delegating responsibilities and creative responsibilities to them as well, and empowering them to make creative choices on their own, but that takes the pressure off of us. So having a team in place that can do the heavy lifting is, I think, a big part of the success that you'll find.
I swear I won't do any follow-up questions, but is it typically, if you have a background being a storyboard artist, the ideal transition to then become a director and showrunner, because you kind of have to understand a little bit of writing, the character design, animation, everything?
It does help, yeah, having that background. Because as a storyboard artist, you're even kind of designing things sometimes. When you pitch the boards, you're trying to imitate the voice and imitate the pacing of the show. So as a board artist, you can get a sense of sort of like what it would be like to edit it together. And a lot of board artists even like edit their own boards. So I think it was really helpful to have that foundation.
And just on this panel, there are kind of two different paths represented. We have we have writers and story editors and moving up in that way. And for us, it's storyboarding. I was animating before that even, and then directing. Yeah, we drawers. But somewhere in there, the work that we've been doing, we start really learning the story, even what if drawing, writing, but like really understanding story and kind of the broader picture of the story, and then starting to, I think, develop some leadership skills, which you do need to be a showrunner. And so that's kind of the track. And then typically on shows these days, typically they will pair together a partnerships, not always, sometimes it's just one person, but typically there'll be some sort of lead, even if it's a supervising producer that's from the art, boarding, animation side, and somebody from the writer side, which works really well, I think.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marina. I'm an associate producer at a small indie animation studio and an aspiring line producer. This question is not specifically about showrunning, but it has to do with production. I want to know your guys' opinion as a showrunner, like the difference between a line producer and a showrunner for animation, and advice on getting there as a line producer.
Well, a line producer, you guys can help me out here. A line producer is really more the person that we talked about, that schedule, right? They are the one that comes up with that schedule, and they're also the one that comes up with the budget. They're the ones that does mostly the hiring and the firing. They're the ones that on a day-to-day basis is there to make sure that the production runs smoothly. They're the ones that sign the contract with all our vendors, be it the animation studio or where we do our voice records. They're the ones that make sure the computers are working. They're basically the person that makes sure everything happens behind the scenes. It is an incredibly difficult job. It is a job that requires a very particular set of skills, and if you are the type of person that can do that, God bless you.
We need great lines. It's very important.
It
I love scheduling.
can be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yes. Yep.
A line producer is generally not a creative position. However, line producers that are creative are the best kinds of line producers because they understand the process and they understand what the creative people need and work to do everything they can to give them the resources that they need, which is not going to be time or money, but everything else that they need to make sure that they're, they can deliver what they hope to.
Thank you so much.
Production is the backbone of what we do, and I feel like there's not enough people that call out how awesome production is. So I love our production team. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Very important.
All right, I think you're both our last two.
Hi, my name's Aaron. I'm a TV comedy writer. Mostly live action, but it's been about a year and a half in an animation writer's room. And one of the things that I found so interesting was how the room structure was different from a live action comedy room or an adult animated room, how a story editor was so pivotal in, supervising the writers on staff and things like that. So I'm just curious about that relationship of story editor and showrunner and how you ensure that it's a good relationship, if you have advice about when you're hiring a story editor as a showrunner or when you were a story editor yourself and working with a showrunner, like what makes it a good relationship where you got a lot out of them and things were great, and what were maybe some times where it was not so good, and just what are some things to avoid when it comes to that? Because I'm hoping to be in a position like you myself at some point in the future, and I just want to make sure I get that part right. It's so interesting to me because it's so different from all the rooms.
I can actually answer part of this because I was a story editor for Rob. I also started because of Rob. He brought me in as a script coordinator on Thunderbirds Are Go, and I love the process of getting to work with him on multiple shows before I became his story editor, because I got a sense of what he likes, what his creative vision is, his process. So by the time I was a story editor, there was a lot that we didn't even need to discuss because we just knew that internally. And I think that's one of the best, if